The council chamber fell into complete silence. Ambassador Kethral of the Valorian Collective stood frozen at the podium, his four crystalline eyes blinking in rapid succession as he processed the holographic data streaming before him. The genetic analysis report floated in the air, its findings displayed in stark blue text that every species present could understand. Around him, representatives from 37 different civilizations sat in stunned disbelief. Dr. Yes, the chief xenobiologist of the Galactic Union Science Division, cleared her throat membrane nervously. She was a Pellucid, a species known for their calm demeanor and logical approach to all things. But even she trembled slightly as she prepared to explain what the research team had discovered about humanity. The humans had joined the Galactic Union only 15 standard cycles ago. Their arrival had been met with curiosity at first, then confusion, and finally something that resembled fear. No one had understood why these soft-skinned bipeds seemed so different from every other known species. They healed faster. They adapted quicker. They showed remarkable resistance to diseases that would kill other species within hours. They consumed substances that were classified as toxic. They survived in temperature ranges that would boil or freeze most organic life forms. And now, after years of extensive genetic research, Dr. Yenis finally had the answer. She activated the next sequence of data and began speaking to the assembled delegates. The humans, she explained, had not evolved on a paradise world like most civilized species. They had not developed on a planet with stable weather patterns, gentle seasons, and cooperative ecosystems. No, humanity had crawled its way to sentience on a world that the Galactic Union would officially classify as a Category 12 death world. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Category 12 was the highest danger classification that existed. Only 3 planets in the known galaxy had ever received such a rating, and all of them had been immediately quarantined. No expeditions were permitted. No colonies would ever be established. They were worlds where death lurked in every shadow, where survival was measured in moments rather than years. And humans called their Category 12 death world home. Dr. Yenis continued her presentation with growing unease. Earth, as the humans called it, was a nightmare realm of constant danger. The planet possessed a molten core that generated unpredictable magnetic fluctuations. Massive tectonic plates ground against each other beneath the surface, releasing tremendous amounts of energy in events called earthquakes. Mountains sometimes exploded, spewing molten rock and poisonous gases across entire regions. The atmosphere regularly generated rotating columns of destructive wind and massive electrical storms that hurled bolts of pure energy at the ground. The Talaxian delegate raised a trembling appendage and asked if the doctor was perhaps exaggerating for dramatic effect. She was not. Earth's water cycle, Dr. Yenis continued, was equally hostile. Approximately 70% of the planet's surface was covered in a substance that most species found corrosive to their outer membranes. The humans called it water, and they not only touched it regularly, but submerged themselves in it for recreation. This water fell from the sky in events called rain, sometimes freezing into solid projectiles that pelted the surface. Larger accumulations created floods that swept away everything in their path. The oceans churned with currents and generated massive waves that could destroy coastal settlements. But the geological and meteorological dangers were only the beginning. The biological threats on Earth made everything else seem trivial by comparison. Dr. Yenis displayed images of Earth's ecosystem, and several delegates had to look away. The planet teemed with predators at every level of the food chain. Massive creatures with rows of razor-sharp teeth patrolled the oceans. Large cats with claws that could shred metal stalked the grasslands. Bears that stood 3 meters tall roamed the forests. Venomous serpents slithered through the undergrowth. Aerial predators with keen eyesight hunted from above. And those were just the large threats that humans could see coming. The microscopic dangers were far worse. Earth harbored billions of species of bacteria, viruses, parasites, and fungi, many of which existed solely to invade and destroy other organisms. Diseases spread invisibly through the air, through water, through physical contact, through the bites of tiny insects. Plagues had swept across human populations throughout their history, killing millions at a time. And yet, somehow, humanity had survived every single one. The Mullerin ambassador asked how this was possible. How could any species endure such constant assault and still achieve space travel? Dr. Yennis explained that human biology had adapted to meet these challenges. Their immune systems were incredibly aggressive, capable of learning and remembering threats for decades. Their bodies produced natural antibiotics and antiviral compounds. They could survive the loss of significant amounts of blood and internal organs. Their bones knit themselves back together when broken. Their skin grew back when damaged. They could function without sleep for extended periods when necessary, running on chemical compounds their bodies produced in response to stress. Humans possessed something called an adrenal system that activated during moments of danger. This system flooded their bodies with hormones that increased their strength, speed, and pain tolerance. They called this response fight or flight, and it turned ordinary humans into temporary super soldiers capable of extraordinary physical feats. Records showed humans lifting objects that should have been far too heavy for their frames. They had outrun predators. They had fought off attackers despite sustaining injuries that would have killed members of other species instantly. The biological evidence was overwhelming, but Dr. Yennis had more to share. She displayed data about human psychology, and this proved even more disturbing to the assembled delegates. Humans had not only survived their death world, they had conquered it. They had tamed the massive predators that once hunted them, turning wolves into loyal companions and horses into transportation. They had domesticated other creatures for food and labor. They had cleared forests and redirected rivers. They had built cities on fault lines and in the paths of hurricanes. They had constructed shelters on active volcanoes and established communities in frozen wastelands. They had developed medicines to combat diseases and vaccines to prevent infections. They had created weapons to protect themselves from every threat their planet could produce. And then they had grown bored. Human history showed a species that actively sought out danger for entertainment. They climbed mountains with no guarantee of survival. They dove into the depths of their corrosive oceans. They jumped from great heights with only thin sheets of fabric to slow their fall. They raced vehicles at speeds that would kill them instantly if anything went wrong. They fought each other in organized combat for the amusement of spectators. The Threnodian delegate's color shifted to deep purple, indicating extreme distress. He asked why any sane species would do such things. Dr. Yennis admitted that human psychology was difficult to explain. They had a drive, an internal compulsion to challenge themselves and push beyond their limits. They called it curiosity, or adventurous spirit, or simply being human. What other species viewed as unnecessary risk, humans viewed as the entire point of existence. They did not merely want to survive. They wanted to thrive, to explore, to discover, to achieve things that had never been done before. This psychological trait, combined with their physical adaptations, made humans uniquely suited for expansion across the galaxy. While other species carefully evaluated risks and avoided any situation that might result in harm, humans rushed forward into the unknown. They colonized planets that other civilizations had deemed too dangerous. They volunteered for missions that had low probability of success. They invented new technologies through trial and error, accepting that failures would happen along the way. Ambassador Kethrol finally found his voice and asked the question that everyone was thinking. Given their origins and their capabilities, should the Galactic Union be concerned about humanity's intentions? Dr. Yennis paused before answering. She explained that her research had revealed something else about humans. something that perhaps explained why they had been so cooperative since joining the Union. Despite their violent evolutionary history, humans possessed a remarkable capacity for empathy and cooperation. They formed bonds with each other and with members of other species. They protected those they considered part of their group with the same ferocity they used to fight their enemies. Humans were dangerous, yes, but they were also loyal. The data showed that humans who felt welcomed and respected became fierce allies. They would share their technologies, their medical advances, their knowledge of survival. They would stand beside their friends against any threat. They would sacrifice themselves to protect those they cared about. Numerous incidents since their arrival in the Union had demonstrated this pattern. Human crews had stayed behind to repair damaged stations while other species evacuated. Human doctors had worked without rest to treat alien diseases they barely understood. Human engineers had solved problems that had stumped other civilizations for centuries. The council chamber remained quiet as the delegates processed this information. They had always known that humans were different. Now they understood why. Humanity had not been born in comfort and safety like most sentient species. They had been forged in the fires of a world that never stopped trying to kill them. Every generation had fought for survival. Every individual carried within them the genetic legacy of ancestors who had overcome impossible odds. And they had brought all of that with them to the stars. Ambassador Vorath of the Cassari hegemony stood and addressed the chamber. His species had been the first to make contact with humanity, and he had spent more time with them than most. He confirmed everything that Dr. Yennis had presented. Humans were indeed products of the death world, carrying within them instincts and abilities that no other known species possessed. But he added something that the scientific data could not capture. He had seen humans laugh in the face of danger. He had watched them comfort the dying and celebrate the living. He had observed their art and their music and their stories, all of which spoke to a species that had learned to find beauty and meaning even in the darkest circumstances. Humans were not monsters, Ambassador Vorath declared. They were survivors. And now that they had joined the Galactic Union, their survival meant the survival of all species who called them friends. The vote that followed was unanimous. Humanity would be granted full membership status in the Galactic Union, with all the rights and responsibilities that entailed. More importantly, the Council approved a request that had been pending for months. Humans would be invited to serve in the Union's defense forces, bringing their unique capabilities to bear against threats that other species could not face alone. As the session concluded and delegates filed out of the chamber, small groups could be seen approaching the human observers who had been watching from the gallery. Questions were asked about Earth, about human history, about the strange behaviors that suddenly made much more sense. And the humans answered patiently, often with smiles that showed their distinctive teeth. Those teeth had once been used to tear meat from bone, to consume creatures that had been killed in battle for survival. Now they were displayed in expressions of friendship and welcome. The galaxy had gained new allies on that day. And whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever threats emerged from the dark spaces between stars, the Galactic Union knew that humanity would face them the same way their ancestors had faced every danger on their death world. With determination, with creativity, and with an absolute refusal to accept defeat. Because that was what it meant to be human.